All right, let's get into it. Let's
All right.
fucking go.
Let's
Please.
fucking do it.
Yeah.
Let's go.
All right.
All
So,
right.
please introduce yourself. I assume most of the people that watch my stream know who you are, but in case we have some late bloomers out there, go ahead.
Sure. My name is Aaron. I host the show Reeducation. And basically, on my show, we talk about theory. We try to see if we can relate that theory to real life praxis. And sometimes I just talk about stuff that I feel like is important at the time.
All right. So usually, this is just a fun side note. Usually, whenever I have people on for this Socialism Around the World project, I usually start my stream by playing the national anthem of the country they're from. But I gotta say, your national anthem fucking sucks.
Yeah, it's not very. It's really boring. It's very liberal.
Yes. So I ended up going with the international instead.
That's much better.
Yeah.
That's one that we can definitely agree on.
Absolutely. So you're Canadian. Where in Canada are you from?
So I'm from the western half of Canada. So Alberta, Saskatchewan, right in and around there.
Okay, so basically all the way over at Alaskan border.
Not quite that far, but pretty close.
All right. So your show is about theory and praxis. How theory can be translated into praxis. What I'm, as far as I understand it.
Yeah, for the most part. I basically what I try to do is I try to get as many ideas as I possibly can, like socialistic ideas. I try to rattle them around in my brain and see how I can basically regurgitate them for a modern day audience. So I usually read a whole lot of books or a lot of pamphlets or whatever. And then later I kind of give my interpretation of it. And then after a little while, I'll try to see if we can use that somehow in real life. So the first thing that we started doing that with was mass line organizing. Oh, sorry, I'm bumping my microphone. The first thing we started doing was mass line organizing. And I have a very anarchistic take on mass line organizing. So I do it a little bit differently than some Maoist organizations do. But essentially, the idea is talking to people in your local community, finding out what the problems are in that community, and then having those problems come to us, people that know a lot about socialism, trying to find out if there's some sort of socialist solution to that problem, and then bringing it back to the community, and basically repeating that process over and over and over until we find certain things that'll work. Mao calls them a line. That would kind of insinuate sort of like a marching order or like a line to go by. We usually just call it like a solution, like a socialist solution. And through that, we were able to come up with a couple of different things. The first thing that we started to do was basically door-to-door food delivery for people that don't have any food. It was sort of like a COVID-friendly, direct-to-your-door food bank sort of deal. We would find, say, 10, 15 people that needed food, children, people with families, older people, stuff like that. And we would get together a bunch of different bags that had what that specific person would probably need and delivered them to their houses. So it was like from each according to their ability, to each according to their need. We had the ability, they had the need. We found out what their need was. We tried to fix that. And then later on, I started doing a lot more research into mutual aid and gift economics and that sort of thing. So we started our community fridge program, which has been going very well so far. It started just before Christmas, and in the past few months, we've been able to put up 2 different community fridges in 2 different neighborhoods that suit 2 very different types of demographics that have very different needs as well. So. And that's been going really well. So, and then I also talk about news and stuff like that whenever it comes up. Like I was just talking about all of the protests that were going on in the last couple of days.
Yeah. So you're basically you guys are taking down the bourgeoisie one fridge at a time, is what I'm getting.
You fucking bet. It's not all about just the fridges either. It's not all just about specifically delivering food, though that is important. Trying to
Yeah,
fix food insecurity is important.
but basically
The commu-
helping the community.
yeah, exactly. The community fridge itself, as an entity, and this could happen with any kind of free store, is supposed to be a local hub where we use the ideas of anarchism in practice, and we actually do things fully anarchistically and show the people around us that these ideas are useful, they're tenable, they're easy solutions, and they work in real life. And we've done some amazing things so far. The recent fridge that we just put up, the enclosure for it, probably runs upwards of $10,000. All of the everything was completely free. It was donated labor, it was donated materials, donated time, as well as another $10,000 was donated in labor and time of a boring company actually running electrical lines to the nearest building, so we could actually run power off of the thing as well.
Hmm.
So yeah, so it's a way of showing that things work in real life, and we also have other projects that we're working on as well. We're slowly working on the community defense networks. Slowly, we have quite a few networks now, and anti-fascism networks and stuff like that. So yeah, we got a lot of fingers in a lot of pots. That's basically what's going on.
Well, I really appreciate the sort of effort you guys are making in that case to the community, because I'm under the impression that a lot of, like, when we talk about terminally online leftism, that is very unhelpful to our cause. Whereas when I hear something like this, that hey, we organize a community to help the broader community, that sounds really helpful.
Yeah,
Like,
well, I agree, and it kind of reminds me of well, I mean, like the community helping the community sort of thing. Obviously, it's a Maoist, not Maoist. It's not a Maoist idea. Mao talks a lot about it, but I remember Luna Oi talking about Ho Chi Minh, how when the peasants needed grain, he didn't wait around to teach them all how socialism works to get them grain. They went in and got the fucking grain. And that's what we need to do. Is we can't expect that everybody is going to understand socialism. We can't even expect that everybody is going to 100% become radicalized. But what we can do is we can show them real world examples of how this stuff can actually function and fix people's problems. And I think that's where we need to be meeting people at. And as far as the internet being a complete like cesspool hellscape of people that are just completely inactive and actively working towards destroying the movement, I completely agree. And Twitter is probably one of the worst places in the world for any of us to be organizing.
oh yeah,
Get out of Twitter, get into the streets. That's what I say.
oh yeah. That reminds me of a quote that my friend Sansi uses to say, that politics is what you do, not what you are.
Yep.
And like, I don't care what people call themselves as long as they're working in order to better the world around them. Um, like, uh, uh, it kind of goes into the whole. I don't know how much you have, how much you familiarized yourself with Voss's take on the election, but he was talking about, like, if we need to brand it as super capitalism in order to bring people over, we should do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I find that sort of rhetoric to be very frustrating. I believe that the way that we think about things in the mainstream, as far as socialism, like the words socialism, capitalism, that sort of thing, is very, very skewed and incorrect to the definitions that we've used throughout history for those things. And I think that when we introduce more rhetoric that serves to muddy the waters and confuses things, it makes things more difficult for us to actually express the real motives and theories that we have behind the praxis that we do, and the praxis behind the theories that we have. So I think that instead of muddying the language and saying things like, oh, we should rebrand as super capitalism, what I've noticed works really well is being straightforward with people, telling them exactly what you believe, not using a bunch of buzzwords, and just telling them exactly the way things are, the way things could be through a socialist lens. And if you stray away from saying inflammatory things like I'm an anarchist. Well, anarchist doesn't really have a negative connotation here, but say communism does. If you say I'm a communist right out the bat, people are probably going to look at you with a side eye for a little while. But if you explain economics to them for a little while, and they go, you know what, I really appreciate that. That makes a lot of sense. And then they say, what is that you're talking about? And you say, well, it's communism.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden people are more open to listening to that sort of thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like my take is that you explain your ideals out the gate, and then the sort of name of the group is less important, especially when you're trying to bring people over. And then, like you say, well, when you got them on the hook, then you can introduce them to the broader ideas of the specific ideology that you yourself follow.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's not like I want everybody. Well, I mean, I do want everybody to be walking around holding black flags and radicalized as fuck and proud communists and all that sort of thing. I would love that, but to expect that out of out of people that for generations have been propagandized to believe that's a bad thing, it's not a realistic expectation. So if we just work with people, we talk about the things that we want to do, they're more than willing to listen. Most people are pretty smart. They'll figure things out on their own pretty well. And we try to move them a little bit, and we just show them a better way. And that's, I think, the best way to do that sort of thing.
Yeah. So let's get into Canada, since that's why we're here after all.
Sure.
You told me earlier today that you have less information about like politicians that would see themselves as socialists. Does that mean that you are not interested in electoralism at all, or does it just mean that you just don't trust the ones that would necessarily brand themselves as that?
Yeah, both. I mean, okay, so the electoralism question is a tough one because in some minor instances, such as in local government, I have heard arguments where it could be useful, and I want to. For example, in Rojava, Syria, they used a form of government called democratic confederalism based on the ideas of Murray Bookchin and Abdullah Öcalan. And within that, they actually use a form of local government that essentially tries to elect certain people into local government that are that directly respond to the people that elected them. So I think that that's an interesting idea. And if it works, I think that I would definitely not turn it away because a diversity of tactics is definitely important. But when it gets to the higher forms of electoralism, you end up with so much rampant corruption and cronyism and bullshit that even if a socialist was able to get into those positions, first of all, they would have to immediately step themselves down a few notches as socialists and have to play the capitalist game, or else none of their constituency is going to think that they're doing anything for them. If you go in there saying, oh, well, I want to abolish capitalism. The wage system is bullshit. All of these people are wage slaves, blah, 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 blah. They're going to let you talk for about 5 minutes before they interrupt you and laugh and say, okay, well, now let's talk about something serious like reducing the budget. So you have to immediately step yourself back and you have to play the capitalist game so you can actually prove to your constituents that, yes, you've done something for them. So that immediately brings you down. And through that method, through the system, it's shown time and time again that the system is inherently corruptible, and it works to actively corrupt people that enter into it. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is a perfect example of that. How her rhetoric was very strong at the very beginning when she was running. And then recently now she's been seen donating money to all kinds of Democrat politicians. She's also towed the line with a bunch of things that Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden has wanted, basically played defense for them. So the system itself actively works to corrupt. So when it comes all the way up to the presidency, now you're so unbelievably abstracted from your politics and politicians and everything like that, that it's not even anything anymore. Now it's just a TV show. Now it's just a fucking game. So I always tell people, as far as electoralism goes, if you think that it works, if you think that it's helpful, then use it. If you don't think that it works, like I don't really think that it works, then don't worry about it. Either way, you should spend the majority of your time doing something like helping people directly, getting the
Yeah.
street, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So do you know Michael Brooks at all?
I know the name. He's not a podcaster, but he's got like a YouTube channel.
Yeah, he used to. He passed away
Oh,
last
that's
year.
right.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, yeah. Now
Uh,
it's all coming back to me now. Yeah.
yeah, and I feel like he had a pretty, like at least, I agreed with his take on electoralism, even when it's like a Hillary versus Trump or Biden versus Trump. It's like for most of your time, you spend your time actively trying to make the world better, and then when you in the electoral system, you just vote to stop the bleeding, and that's the only thing electoralism is really there for, um, in a
Yeah.
sense.
Well, yeah, and to add to that, it doesn't even fully stop the bleeding. It may help a small amount, but it's like putting a band-aid over a bullet hole.
Yeah, you work
At
to
this point, I
reduce
think
it
that
more. Well,
yeah, exactly, and that's a brilliant point. Yeah, the harm reduction argument is a good point. Noam Chomsky has made it many times, that sort of thing. I think that if we do it for harm reduction, that's great. But I don't think that we should be promoting it as though it's any sort of solution ever. Like, I don't think that we should praise that as a good idea. I don't think that we should show it as something that's necessarily useful or beneficial. I, in fact, think that we should do the opposite. We should actively demonize that sort of political thinking, even though we think that it is necessary to use your vote for harm reduction and go ahead and do so. Absolutely. We need a systemic change. We need things to actively be better and not just putting small band-aid fixes on a gaping, gushing wound.
yeah. So um, you talked initially about like the different kinds of praxis that you are involved with. How would you say that socialist action or anarchist action works in Canada? Like in a broader picture, do you feel like you do you have a broad support, or is it like, or is leftism looked kind of down on in Canada, or
No, okay. So, well, I'm from the western part of Canada. So, if you're looking at it sort of like the United States, I basically live in the South.
oof,
We got a lot of racists. We got a lot of white supremacist gangs and groups. Um, we actually have a lot of really big active gangs that are white nationalist here. So it's like it's pretty scary sometimes, right? Because yeah, there's a lot of soldiers of Odin. There
oh
used to
god,
be another group. Yeah, they're pretty bad. There used to be another group called the Aryan Guard, but luckily they were chased away a long time ago, probably 2016,
yikes,
by a bunch of my good friends, and that's fun. But yeah, there are a lot of right wing groups. Three Percenters is huge as well. Hell's Angels is huge, and Hell's Angels, a lot of them are into the fashy stuff, saying. And Yeah, so there is a lot of that. And in the West, just like in the South of America, it is kind of hard to be a leftist because they think that you're a liberal. And the funny thing about it is, I actually have, when we're just specifically talking about the theory of it, about like the things that we believe, I have an easier time describing what I want and how things should be to conservatives because they're kind of, at least the ones around me, are kind of anti-state already. So it doesn't take much to push them over the edge of being like, yeah, capitalism is also fucked too. So a lot of them I actually find really easy to work with, and they are mostly agreeable. Whereas liberals, it's more or less harder for me because I haven't really grown up with those sorts of people, so I don't know how to talk to them, I guess. Um, And yeah, so as far as it being easy for leftists here, it's not easy. I don't think that it's easy for leftists anywhere. But people are receptive to certain things. The community fridge initiative that we've been putting on, people are super duper receptive to that, as well as anti-fascist organizing. Man, like a couple of weeks ago, there were a group of, I believe it was 8 people that were standing up to oppose fascism. And after a bunch of shit happened in Calgary, now half the city shows up and opposes it. So I think that a lot of people in Canada, they're pretty liberal already, even the conservatives. And so leftism to Canadians isn't quite as scary, I think.
Yeah, that's pretty good though.
Yeah.
Like, um, do you feel like there's a big difference between like American leftism and Canadian leftism?
Yeah, I don't, that's tough. I know that like there's a lot of Canadian leftists that are prominent YouTubers that or influencers, whatever you want to say. Uh,
Yeah, like
uh,
that Aaron guy.
yeah, I'd say there's a lot bigger ones than me. So like I think that a lot and their audiences, I know my audience and probably everybody, the serfs as well, their audiences are overwhelmingly American, probably yours as well. So I think that a lot of our thought as far as leftism goes overlaps. Um, yeah, I don't think that we have that much of a difference on that. The conservatives, on the other hand, they are almost indistinguishable here to the conservatives or the Republicans in the United States. We actively have people wearing Trump hats and flying Trump flags and saying Trump 2020 and all of these things and listen to every word that he says. It's like a cult. It's just as well, I would say it's almost as bad here as it is in the States.
Jeez, I remember the first time I saw someone with a MAGA hat in Norway, and it was fucking weird. Like, like imagine being that engaged by a politician in the country that you are like. Not even like I can understand being interested in political figures in different countries because socialists do that all the time, but
Mhm.
but it's like it's Trump.
It's not even your country. Yeah, and it's Trump. Like, why? Why would you do that?
Like, jeez.
You would think that he was running for president in our country, though, most of the time, because you'll see pictures of Trump juxtaposed next to Justin Trudeau, and it's just funny whenever you see that because it's like, guys, it's not. He's not here. He's not coming. He's in the States. Like fucking Christ.
So about Justin Trudeau, what's your? I assume I know what you're gonna say ish here, but what's your take on him?
I hate the guy. Like I think he's terrible. He's markedly better than like some of the United States, some of America's presidents. Um, but he does very 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 neoliberal policies that are similar to a lot of other neoliberal politicians all across the world. He reminds me kind of like of Macron, but the difference is Canadians don't do anything when he does terrible shit. Um, he did institute the CERB benefits, which is essentially a UBI that Canadians get during the COVID pandemic, which is something like $2,000 a month, or it was, which was nice. It was definitely nice. I don't think he would have done it if it wasn't for Jagmeet Singh, who's the I guess Democratic Socialist politician for the NDP here. He really pushed him on that and kind of forced Justin Trudeau, I feel, to do something like that. If he wasn't there, I don't know if he ever would have done it. But so yeah, that part is good. But also the entire thing was heavily means tested. It was really really hard to get for a lot of people. If you didn't have a job just prior to the COVID pandemic happening, you couldn't access the benefit. A lot of people had to pay back the benefit or had the benefit canceled for whatever reason. Lineups for the benefit, I guess audio. What do we call it? Queues on the phone would last 14 hours. Sometimes people would log on in the morning and have to wait all day long, and then end up getting hung up on by the end because the businesses or because the city place had closed. So that was all a bunch of bullshit. And Justin Trudeau himself is just like, he's a shitty person. Like, he always dresses up like different races. Like, he just thinks that like every other race is a fucking costume, which really is like, it's funny to make fun of. But when you like really think about it, it's really fucking childish, you know?
Yeah.
And the fact that he did it like all the way up into his into him being the prime minister is like, fuck off, man. Like, you're really gonna put on a headdress and face paint
Yeah,
after like
the blackface thing is quite bad.
yeah, the blackface thing. Yeah, absolutely. That happened like when he was younger, and then he just keeps doing the shit. And it's almost always Muslims or brown people that he's making that he's basically mocking. I would say that it's mocking. So yeah, I fucking hate Justin Trudeau. I think that he's terrible.
Yeah.
I have a whole video series about how much he's how big of a piece of shit he is. Actually, I just remembered that.
I'm definitely gonna check that out. So would you say that there are preferable alternatives to Trudeau, like?
Oh yeah.
Like within the electoral system. I know this isn't really your field of interest, but I just want to kind of like finish it up before we move on.
Oh yeah, that's no problem. Yeah, I would definitely say that Jagmeet Singh, he's the leader of the NDP, the New Democrat Party. I believe that's what it stands for. It's been a long time.
New Democrats of Canada? No, wait, I don't know.
New Democrat Party, I think it's called New Democrat Party,
Yeah.
something like that. Anyway, he's really good. He's first of all, he's a fucking hottie. My goodness. And also, like, yeah, a lot of his policies are really good. I think that he's a really, really smart guy. As far as socialists or, heavy scare quotes, socialists in politics goes, the guy, he tries. I really feel like he does try. He feels like more genuine than your average politician. Obviously, I'm not going to, fully endorse him or anything like that. He's still a politician. He's still either going to be or has already been corrupted in some way. But he's a good one. And I think that if I was to vote, I would probably vote NDP. So there's that. As far as the rest of Canadian politics goes, I try to stay so far away from that kind of stuff. It's not my realm, like, we do different things. They bloviate and try to gain power through getting people to vote for them. And what we're doing is we're just working with our communities. I always say to people in the community, wouldn't it be so much better if we actually sat down in a living room and discussed the topics that we have disagreements about, rather than voting on politicians who hopefully will solve the problems by themselves? It's a nonsensical idea.
So, okay, so we can move off the electoralism, I think.
Sure.
So in terms of like policy, then, are there any like prominent policies that leftists in Canada are currently fighting hard for or against? That's like, let's say it's dominating the media or whatever.
Yeah, so that's the thing. You were asking before if people are accepting of leftist ideas in Canada. I think that they are. As far as leftists actually actively fighting for specific policy changes or anything like that, there are some voices, but a lot of them are not very loud, and you don't hear them very often. A lot of the leftists that I talk to, they try to fight for expanding Medicare or expanding the Canadian healthcare to include things like vision care and prosthetics and hearing care and that sort of thing. Eye care, all of the extra stuff is not covered by our healthcare system, which is bonkers. Oh, as well as pharmacare, because you still have to pay for all of your medications unless you can get your company to pay for it through their healthcare policies. So Some leftists are fighting for those sorts of things. But that's basically all that I can really think of off the top of my head. As far as leftist groups are concerned, there is a very strong anti-fascist contingency that's starting to pop up all across Western Canada, and they're just kicking major ass and really being a dominant force on the streets, which I've been really interested. It's been really interesting to watch. So that's really cool. And also the mutual aid networks that have been going up, like the Community Fridge Initiative. There are a lot of other people doing it, not just me. And that sort of thing it's really been blowing up across Canada as well.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Do you know if it's the same thing, like, let's say, on the east coast of Canada, or?
I think on the East Coast, actually, they've been focusing a lot on forming tenants unions. I think that I seen a bunch of stuff come out of Toronto, but I might be wrong about that. But they were working. There was a couple of places that were trying to form tenants unions, I believe. Excuse me, down there. So I think that's really useful. But as far as any of that, the rest of Eastern Canada is concerned, I don't really know much about it. It's such a big country. It's so far away.
Yeah.
I've never been there.
Huh.
Yeah.
Canada's the second largest country in the world, isn't it?
Yeah, by land mass. And we have a population, like, I think it's the same size as, like, California, like, all of Canada.
Well, you have a lot of space, then.
Oh, yeah. If anybody wants to move to Canada, we got a lot of room.
Okay, so in terms of where you are, would you say that, like, okay, so if I went out on the street where you live, and I were to tell someone that, hey, I'm a leftist, like, within a conversation, so it didn't get weird, would people then have, like, a positive or negative reaction to that generally?
If you just come straight out and say to somebody on the street here that you're a leftist, they will immediately dismiss you. They'll think that you're a liberal or like an AOC Democrat, and they'll just think that you're a lunatic, basically. Even liberals down here probably will, most of the time, the liberals I've talked to, they'll look at leftists as being idealistic, kind of like weirdos. So yeah, not a lot of people in at least my part of Canada are super accepting of leftists. If you call yourself a leftist right off the bat, they usually warm right up to you once you talk about things for a little while, like I was saying. But right off the bat, they're like, yeah, they think you're sus.
Oof. So a little bit about yourself. As I understand it, and you might correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I've heard, you used to be pretty hardcore into the right wing.
Yeah, I was. That's true. I can talk about that a little bit if you like.
Yeah, sure. Well, what I'm a little bit interested in, and you can talk a little bit about it, of course, is like your transition from the hardcore right wing and over to the good side, and like how that was, how your sort of perspectives of the world changed, and so on.
Yeah, for sure. So when I was growing up, and this is years now, I'm an old man now, right? I'm in my mid-30s. So years ago, back when I was in high school, I used to hang out a lot with people that were involved in neo-Nazi and fascist gangs. Now, I wasn't specifically one of them, but I was in around a lot of the things that they did. And participated in doing some pretty stupid shit with them, like graffiti and that sort of thing. And it was a really fucked up time in my life. I came from a really poor background. I was an angry kid. My parents had been divorced. Like we were constantly being shipped back and forth from one parent to another. A lot of mental abuse went on back in those days, and I guess that I suppose I was looking for some sort of outlet. And I had a friend of mine, an ex-friend of mine now, that started getting into these real neo-Nazi type fascist ideas. I remember one time he was searching for like Klan outfits and like combat boots and shit like that on his computer at home. And so obviously that was starting to get a little bit scary. And I ended up in a bunch of incidences where I was actively trying to defend the things that he was saying, because at the time I was like, yeah, freedom of speech, freedom of speech. This guy should be allowed to say whatever he wanted. One notable situation was this guy was coming to school all the time, or not all the time, tried to come to school with a black shirt that had a giant white circle with a big black swastika in the center of it.
Oof.
And yeah, and the teachers wanted to send him home, obviously, because fuck that.
How weird.
Like, I know, like, looking back on this, it's like so fucking stupid, right? But like, my defense of him, right, trying to be the rational skeptic as I was back in those days before it was a meme. I was the rational skeptic before it was uncool. I was saying, well, freedom of speech, freedom of speech. He should be allowed to wear that. It said white pride worldwide on it. And I said he should be able to wear a white pride shirt because the native population is allowed to wear native pride shirts, which is not the same thing. And the teachers realized that. I didn't realize that. And yeah, so I ended up getting expelled from school. He got expelled as well, that sort of thing. We went to summer school. It's a long story. I could go on forever about it. But later on, when I started growing up a little bit more, remember, like, this is, I guess, 15, 16, right? Like, my nuts just fucking dropped, right? Like, I still had new car smell. So I never fucking seen anything in the world. I had like 2 jobs at like a call center up until this point, and I didn't fucking know anything. So I got out into the world, and I just started talking to a lot of people, I started to see people in the workforce that were of different ethnicities and different genders and that sort of thing. And realized that they were just as smart, some of them way smarter than me, and way more thoughtful and very wise and all of these things. So I started to just kind of realize that people are all equal, and we shouldn't be segregating people on race. And there is no such thing as like white people being like the most amazing people in the world that invented all of the things. Even back in Nazi Germany, that was a bullshit talking point, because they had to kind of sweep under the rug all of the Italians and brown people from like the bottom of the fucking continent who did everything before them. But whatever.
They didn't even manage to invent their own ideology.
Yeah. The Roman salute. It's like, yeah, okay. Yeah, so I started to realize that a lot of the things that I was thinking was a lot of bullshit. And something that I actually thought of more recently is that I think what draws a lot of people, a lot of white kids, to that sort of ideology at the beginning is this like inflated and like mythicized sense of history, that kind of like it, all of the symbolism and the uniforms and the ideas and like how this dates back to this thing, and all of the like the little trails that you can go down with all of these different like weird obscure facts and like all of that. I think a lot of like, I would say like nerdy people are like, and angry males, obviously nerdy people and angry males are really interested in getting into these things, because I think it feels like it has a lore. And I also kind of feel like that's why like some gamers and other groups like disaffected white kids out in the middle of suburbia, I feel like that's why it's attractive to them partly. But anyway, I'm getting off topic. So yeah, over a course of a long time, I slowly was able to finally break my way out of that line of thinking. And it didn't just take one argument. It didn't just take one day. It took a long, very long process of me understanding that all of the things that I had learned up to that point were basically a fucking lie. I had to be re-educated, for for lack of a better word, on the entire world, right? Because I was under this fucking false impression that all of these different races and stuff like that needed to be segregated and all of these stupid bullshit things. So yeah, so finally, after over a decade of learning and understanding things, I finally made my way over to leftism, and I've been there ever since. And I've met a few, and I've actually helped to de-radicalize a few people who were on that path, who
Nice.
now are some of the most ardent, staunch anti-fascists that you have ever seen. Because there is something to be said about somebody that gets indoctrinated into something like that when you're a kid. It's a fucking cult. It's a cult, right? And when you get out of that, when you finally are able to break free of that tortured way of thinking, at the end of that, you are so angry at that whole system for fucking deluding you and confusing you and turning you into a bastard, that it makes you want to destroy it. And I know so many people who are very, very, very interested in destroying any fucking thing to do with fascism, because they had to deal with it themselves firsthand, right? Or they've seen family members that had gone down that path and how it's destroyed their lives or the family members' lives of other people. One thing that I have to say, like, this is an argument that's been going on a lot on Twitter lately, about how people shouldn't expect to allow Nazis and fascists or ex-Nazis and fascists into their spaces because it could be damaging. I agree. I fucking agree. Absolutely, 100%. If you feel like you're unsafe around somebody who used to believe in those sorts of things, that's totally understandable. And I think that you have a right to have a safe space for you to grow and change. And I also think that people that have been able to understand understand this sort of line of behavior, and who know how to de-radicalize people, professionals or people that have physically done this before, I think that those people should be the ones that deal with de-radicalization, right? But that should never be our main goal as leftists. Our main goal as leftists should be talking to our neighbors, talking to our people on the outside world that are closest to us, and building community networks locally, right? And abroad eventually, of course, and moving those people, right? I don't think that we should be trying, if people are POC or people are indigenous or anything like that. I don't think that people that are ex-fascists should be trying to invade their spaces. I don't think that, and I don't think that anybody should feel like that sort of thing could be suspicious or whatever. So that's just my 2 cents on that.
Yeah. Going back to the point of like mythologizing history and stuff like that, I do feel like there is in particular one guy in Canada that is making a career out of these things. So let's just jump into that. What's your take on Jordan Peterson?
Oh, that's so funny that you're saying Jordan Peterson, because I'm like, fuck, I could think of like 5 fucking people right now. Jordan Peterson, okay, Jordan Peterson is a weird one. I think that he dog whistles to the fascists and to the Nazis a lot. He is also highly, highly respected by normies here in Canada. Like he's a big deal. He's a homegrown sensation, and even regular people. And I say regular people because like most regular people around here are center right. But most regular people, they fucking love him. They love what's that podcaster? Joe Rogan. They love Joe Rogan. They love all of those guys. Even like friends of mine that I've been friends with since like high school, who I know are like, center left, right? More or less like liberal, but center left. They even say that people like Ben Shapiro are pretty cool guys. I think that in Canada, especially in the western part of Canada, a lot of these right-wing narratives and talking points have really bled into the ecosystem and have saturated things so much that it almost becomes like the default position on a lot of things. When you say that you're a leftist or a liberal, especially in the West, right, people immediately think that you just don't understand things, that you're infantile, that you're a dummy, all of these sorts of things. And they see people like Jordan Peterson, like Ben Shapiro, all of these people as being rational actors, even though they spread conspiracy theories and all kinds of lunacy. And they opened the door up to other more wacky individuals. Like here in Canada, there's this guy named Kevin J. Johnson, or Johnston, who's a complete wackadoo. And he's an anti-masker, and he signals to literally Nazis all of the time. Endorses people to come carry tiki torches to his rallies and all kinds of things like that. And that opens the door to the Sons of Vote, or Soldiers of Vote, and all of the other white nationalist groups. So there's a perfect radicalization tunnel going directly from basically the mainstream media in Canada, or close to it, the talk radio in Canada, directly straight into the hands of a lot of the fascist groups around here. And we just don't have strong leftist voices that are able to grab hold of the media. The serfs are a big one, right? They're a strong leftist voice that is pretty big. Yeah. Funny enough, J-Reg, but he's not really a leftist. Nobody knows what he is, but he at least has some sort of social commentary coming from Canada. But yeah, there aren't really those powerful leftist figures in Canada that can fight against that radicalization pipeline as easily. Oh, and I guess Thought Slime as well. I didn't even think about that, but yeah.
Oh, you'll get there.
Yeah.
Let's see. Zansi asked a question in chat. The national question in Canada is complicated. There is an issue of Canadian socialists wanting to overrule / subsume or ignore First Nation interests. How is that solidarity project going?
Oh goodness, I actually Zanzi knows more about that than I do, apparently, because I honestly haven't heard much about that. I know that there have been a lot of Indigenous groups that have been fighting for their land, and every socialist that I know has been fighting right alongside them. Maybe if he could send a little bit more information about that, I'd love to read up on it, but I don't know much about it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, Zanzi knows more than most people.
Yeah, all of our brains, including all of everybody in the chat, could fit inside of his brain.
Yeah, I had him on about Ireland, and I learned so much new information that
That's all. It's funny that you chose me to talk about Canada, because I'm so disassociated from Canadian politics and like anything going down in Canada. I'm like, I know what's going on in my local neighborhood and on my block.
well, to be fair though, like that's a little bit of why I chose you, because I know that you are actively engaged in practical real life politics, if you want to call it that. But wait. I rephrased I phrased the question of Zanzi. Wait, the answer was informative. Oh, whatever. Okay. Yeah. So I know that you engage with like real life action when it comes to these things, and that's sort of why I chose you for it, because I do think that there is an inherent value in practicing politics on the sort of ground level that we don't see too much of from, again, being online, just talking to YouTubers or just being on Twitter.
Yeah. So yeah, I agree with that. That's fair.
So your show Re-Education, is that name a reference to your own transformation, or?
I never thought about it like that, but maybe it is a little bit of, maybe it's a little bit of everything, because I always look at the show, and I've said this in a couple of videos, and I think I should say it more often. I always look at the show as kind of being a gradual evolution, right? It's always been the tagline of the show before it actually became all about leftism was actually keep evolving. I used to do like more skeptical stuff, and I would always say at the very end, keep evolving, right? And maybe I should bring that back. I don't know, but I think that that's really the the aspect of this show is that it's always been sort of an evolution, not just of my understanding of things, right? But the show itself is like me learning things with you as we go. So, like I said at the beginning, I'll read some books, I'll listen to some podcasts, I'll get a bunch of wacky information in my head, and then I'll go have a shower and I'll think about it for a little while. And then I'll blurt it out on screen, and then I'll listen to or read all of the comments that I get about it. And sometimes now, not so much now, but definitely at the beginning, there was a lot of really interesting thoughts and comments and stuff like that that would inspire different ideas and more videos and that sort of thing. Not saying that I don't get great comments now. It's just that like I've covered so many things now. I have like 200 more plus videos that I've covered topics. So I get a lot of repeats now. But it was always like a learning experience and moving forward. So yeah, I think that's fair. And also I would say the name Re-Education was always kind of satirical in that like the whole world, the way that we understand it, is completely flawed. We don't have a really good understanding. Our education system is broken. It teaches us nothing but capitalist propaganda. We have to re-educate ourselves. So like my goal was to help re-educate people. So it was kind of that, but it was always kind of like a satirical sort of play on the re-education camps.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. Like, would you say that your channel is a bit like a camp in some sorts?
A little bit. Like I try to play up the whole motif. I used to have like communist propaganda in the videos, which people get so mad about that I've stopped doing it as much. But I always used to try to have all of my video titles kind of like very propagandistically written. I try to have the thumbnails look like propaganda posters. Like that's the whole idea is like I'm a propagandist trying to give you propaganda that turns out that it's pretty good. It's good stuff. It's not bad. It's not scary. It's fine.
Yeah, I remember I saw a video that Vosh did on you. Or well, he watched like the first 10 seconds of your of a video that you had made, and then he made an argument for why you misunderstood one of his points or whatever.
Yeah.
That it was based on the optics of leftism, I guess. The
Yeah.
whole Yushenka and the red flags and all of that kind of stuff. So, would you say that your opinion on that has changed, or do you still advocate for like being very front and center with like the iconography?
I don't remember exactly what my point was in that video because I got harassed so hard from his audience that I ended up deleting that video.
Jesus, he
Like
fucking told
I
them
made,
not to do that.
I know, yeah, funny about that. I made like the world's most mild criticism about like one obscure thing that he said in one like little bit of a live stream, and everybody thought that I was like crucifying the guy. It's like, holy fuck, like just settle the fuck down. But I honestly I didn't think that the criticism I had was like it's not like I deleted it because they kept fucking bullying me. I deleted it because I didn't strongly stand by what I said, and I didn't want the impression to go get out there to everybody that I hated Vosh because of this one thing. Because I never have. I've always had problems with Vosh, right? I've always had like differences in understanding. I've always had political disagreements. More recently, I've had like outright like I think that he's actively doing harmful things by pushing state propaganda and by bullying people actively inside of his debates that are like moderately on the left. And it made him look bad, and any of the things that could have been good that could have came out of that were completely destroyed. But whatever, it doesn't matter. So like, yeah, I've had criticism of him and stuff like that in the past. And I think that the whole thing with the optics, right, was, yeah, that I think that usually using strong imagery, strong ideas, strong language, that sort of thing draws a certain type of person in, right? And at the very beginning of what I was doing, that type of person was somebody that was kind of like me, right? Who sees imagery and sees history and sees interesting little things like that and wants to find out a little bit more about it. It's the same thing that I was talking about with the gamer person or the nerd, right? But instead of bringing them down a path where it's going to lead them to fascist ideology, it subverts that idea and takes them down a path of, hey, no, listen, this is actually a good thing. We can actually help people here. We can actually come up with wonderful new ideas and that sort of thing. So yeah, I always think that when it comes to aesthetics, that's what it is. When it comes to aesthetics, it's very important. It should never be discounted. It should never be understated how important aesthetics are. There's a reason why all throughout history, on every single side, they've always had things like flags, like banners, like uniforms, like people all getting together and marching in groups or working in groups or whatever it is. When people see unification, when people see everybody working together, first of all, if you're the opposing force, that's scary as fuck. And when you're somebody that believes in the same sorts of things as all of these other people, seeing those people work together is a natural, instinctual thing that people gravitate towards. And the symbology and all of that sort of thing behind it is also very important. So I think that symbols can be used as tools. I think that they definitely have been misused in the past. If you know anything about Goebbels and all of the atrocities done by the Nazis, they came up with all kinds of ways to use imagery and aesthetics and that sort of thing to push fascism, right? So, and they were able to convince a large portion of an entire country. So yeah, so aesthetics are an important tool that we should be using, but using correctly.
Yeah, and I agree with that. Like, I know that some leftists against streamers or whatever, they do the whole, they're trying to distance themselves from every form of iconography. Like, we can't use the hammer and sickle because that's fucking scary to people that have been growing up propagandized by communism bad. And I understand that to some degree, which is why I use a little bit different iconography for my stuff, but still, like, if you know what it is, you know it's left leaning.
Yeah.
But I have heard the sentence, the Nazis were bad, but they had cool uniforms, quite a lot.
Exactly.
And so it's something about the whole, I don't know, I'm not a sociologist, so I don't know how to describe it exactly, but it's something about the fact that we feel whenever something looks orderly, I guess, like the uniforms or the flags or whatever, you get some sort of sensation out of that.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, I'm sure that there's been science, like I'm sure there's been studies done on it. But yeah, you definitely like that's just a thing that we all know that, right? It's just something that we've all seen. So to say that it's not a thing is kind of like not looking at like reality, I would say.
yeah, I would still be a little bit like, we need to be careful about exactly what kind of iconography we choose to use, though. Seeing
Yeah,
as
exactly.
most people are normies, most people are not like hardcore into leftism or any ideology for that matter. Most people just want to live their lives, and if you suddenly start using Stalin a lot, then that's not gonna make you look good.
No, exactly. And then you have to explain all of the shit. Like I love this little hat that I got at like an antiques roadshow, sorry, at a little antiques mall. And it's like a Russian parade hat. It's actually a policeman's hat, unfortunately, which makes me want to burn it, but it's so cool. Like it's a cool looking thing, right? And I loved having it inside of my videos. I think that it's a cute little item. But so many, like it's the only thing really that I had inside of my videos that was like legitimately from the Soviet Union, right? Like actually communist, like iconography. The only thing, and people so fucking had a problem with this dumb little hat that I don't put it in my videos anymore. I just don't want to listen to the stupid fucking comments. It's just like, okay, whatever. I'm just gonna put the stupid hat on the stupid shelf, and then I put the star in the background. Nothing but overwhelming gratitude, right? People are so happy about the star because normies don't know what the fuck it means, and all of the anarchists are like, "How do you get one of those?" So it's fine.
So you would describe yourself as an anarchist, I guess.
Yeah, anarcho-communist.
Okay, so do you feel like, and this might be a stupid question, but do you feel like there's like a dividing line between just the regular old socialist and anarchists in your community, like in your local community?
Like in my local community, yeah, I would say that there's only two real hardcore anarchists, and one of them is me. There are a bunch of people that are like very anarchist leaning, like really on the cusp of going over that edge. But they're still normies, so they don't really fuck with that all that much. And you got to remember, like a lot of the people that I'm dealing with in my local community, they're center right conservative guys who are construction workers helping to do build stuff. And little old ladies, little sweet old ladies who bake you cookies and muffins and shit, right? So, and you'd be surprised how many sweet little old ladies listen to me all the time and are like, I'm an anarchist.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, like I got like 50 of them on my Twitter. It's fucking hilarious. But yeah, so like yeah, so two of us definitely hardcore anarchists. A bunch like, and that's just in my specific like little group. Then there are a couple who are communists and like not really specifically branded socialists. A few liberals, and most are just regular old normies. And then there's also the other crew that's in another place that I'm not going to talk about a whole lot. There's probably 10 or 12 hardcore, like straight up anarchists, and a couple that call themselves T's, but they're also anarcho-communists, but they also have like posters of Stalin in their of Lenin in their room. So it's kind of confusing.
Yeah, I think, and you can correct me if you feel I'm wrong here, but I
Sure.
think that Lenin has been really lucky with history by the fact that he was succeeded by Stalin.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like, love him or hate him, I know that people seem to come around to Lenin these days, and I've read some of his stuff, and he seemed like a very intelligent man, but I don't know, as like a statesman, if he was a very good or bad person. I haven't read enough up on like the glorious days of the USSR,
Yeah.
but like I feel like just by the fact that Stalin came along after him and Stalin was so bad, Lenin has sort of been let off the hook for a lot of the shit that he did.
So what's your opinion on Lenin? Are you like more pro, more con? What do you think?
Okay, so
Oh, this is a contentious question.
yeah. As a Okay, so from what I've read from him, I think that he, like I said, he seemed like a very intelligent man, and he had a very good grasp on the social unrest around Europe and maybe especially in Russia. Um, However, I would say that from what I've learned, and this might be completely bonkers, but from what I've learned, he did commit some atrocities himself. And so I would say mixed bag, better than Stalin, maybe not as good as I would like him to be.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, that totally makes sense. I mean, like, yeah, I sort of lean towards that same sort of position. I know a little bit about Stalin. I've read a bunch of his books. I my take on him, right, is first of all, The State and Revolution to me reads like the Burn book from what is that movie called? What? From Mean Girls.
Lenin, by the way.
Yeah.
You misspoke.
Well,
But
oh, did I say Stalin?
yeah.
Oh, sorry, I meant to say Lenin. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, Lenin to me, it kind of reads like the Burn book from Mean Girls, where he's just talking about like what's his name, Kotsky, and like a bunch of other people, and talk about how they're all like wrong, and then he gives like the worst possible definition for anarchism, and like completely describes it improperly. So like basically poisoning the well. like there's a lot to be learned from that book. I think that there's a lot of good things to take out of it. But also I think that it has to be read with like such a bunch of extra knowledge behind it that it's not really useful to anybody entering into socialism or anything like that without having a bunch of prior knowledge to what he's talking about and actual real definitions to like actual things like anarchism and that sort of thing. Because like I said, I think that he really poisoned the well in that book. And I think that a lot of people say that it was Trotsky that handled everything that happened with the anarchists. Some people say it was Lenin. I don't really care who it was. I think that both of those individuals and everybody else in the government handled the anarchist situation during that time incredibly poorly, like overwhelmingly poorly. But I would say that essentially what was going on is that Lenin was maybe started off with good intentions, but by the end of it was gunning for power. And I think that he felt it was owed to him. And instead of allowing the workers' Soviets to actually maintain the power and control of the Soviets in their local communities and actually run their businesses and do all of the things that they wanted to do, I think that he just basically snatched hold of power by force and instituted himself as the I don't want to say as the dictatorship of the proletariat, because that, you know, that doesn't logically make sense. But like he was the dictatorship of the proletariat was led by Lenin. So therefore people couldn't do things like, I don't know, organize unions, because how could you organize a union against the dictatorship of the proletariat when you are the proletariat, and that sort of thing, which I think was total bullshit. As far as his actual leadership qualities go, after all of that, some good things, some bad. I think that, like, some good things, some bad. I think that he did the best that he could in the situation that he was in. Could I make substantial criticisms of the way he handled certain things? Absolutely. But yeah, I guess Stalin was worse in some ways. I really appreciate the 2 5-year plans. I think that those were really helpful. But at the same time, they were extremely detrimental to a lot of people in agrarian communities, from what I remember. So yeah, it's a big fucking mixed bag, man.
Yeah, let's say, Sansi says, the state and revolution is basically, you all fuckers don't want a revolution, stop posing as communists.
Yeah, totally.
Let's see. The important sentiment to come out. The most important sentiment to come out of state and revolution is we are not in the conditions to be able to imagine the society that will bring about communism. All we can do is begin the transition and create a society unrecognizable to our own with conditions that allow for the next step. Sure.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah,
I think you can learn a lot from it.
To be fair to the USSR, like, I know this is a tanky talking point, but you know, they did bring Russia from being like a European backwater into becoming the second superpower of the world within 20 years. So I'll give them that, but they also collapsed. So in that sense, it's like, yeah.
I agree. I also think that the collapse was partly due to interference from outside, as well as their own incompetence from inside, and like the rampant corruption. It takes me back to what I was saying at the very beginning about electoralism, right? You essentially have the exact same problem in electoralism as you do in a centralized, in democratic centralism, where people that are in power usually try to hold on to more power. For example, in modern China, I can't remember the exact names of each bureau, but I think that they have the Pilot Bureau, Polit Bureau, something like that. Or the Central Committee. I can't remember which one. But anyway, they essentially have like a leadership that's supposed to be elected by a group of people that are below, and that are elected by a group of people below, and so forth and so on. But since they've already created this power structure that essentially works from the top down, it works to be incestuous. And the people that get nominated into places or elected into places, heavy scare quotes, are usually just elected into those places rubber stamp style, and usually are actually vetted by the elders that have been there for a long time, which is exactly the same thing as the United States Senate, right? You can't usually just get in there if you aren't known by most of the other politicians, or you haven't donated to the right fucking donors, or you haven't kissed the right rings or boots or whatever. So yeah, I would say that so long as we don't eliminate the primary contradiction of the ruler versus the ruled, or the owner versus the owned, or whatever, then we're all, and if we just abstract that and put it towards a different body, then we're always going to have the exact same problems. So we have to tackle both the abolishment of capitalism as well as restructuring the hierarchy so we don't have this fucking happen again. That's my take.
Yeah, I can't really find any objectionable ideas there. Now, to be fair, I'm not 100% sold on anarchism. I don't know. Maybe I just haven't read enough. That might very well be the case. But you know, to give a little bit of background, I grew up as a social democrat, and I've been hardcore into the belief of social democracy for the majority of my life, and so maybe that has colored me into the way that I see the utility of a state, in some degree at least. Now, you know, the ultimate goal is to get rid of the state at some point, but for the time being, I at least see it as a necessary evil, and that it doesn't necessarily have to be like purely a bad thing.
Fair. That's an understandable position to take. What about the state is it that you think is necessary?
Okay, so let's remember that we're working within a capitalist system, and so a socialist world would look very different, of course. But what I think a state is necessary for is, for example, the regulation of the different markets that we have to that we have in society, as society is today, and the protections for, you know, as long as the state does its job properly, then it would be protections for poor and disadvantaged people. Norway's fairly okay with that, not the last couple of years because we've had a right-wing government, but that's neither here nor there. And also it can basically put a chokehold on companies that want to exploit the planet and their workers. So that's like the basic fundamentals of why I see a state as at least necessary for the time being.
Sure. And I totally agree with every single one of those points. So long as you're going through some kind of transitionary period, if that's where we're going to go, you're going to need to have some sort of apparatus in place to make sure that there's checks and balances, to make sure that certain industries don't abuse child labor laws, and to make sure that people are getting paid a fair wage and that sort of thing, until eventually you're able to completely eradicate money and that sort of thing. My question is, do you think that we could do that fully democratically without having specifically politicians do it?
Oof. Now we're getting into the hard questions, I see.
Yeah.
I guess my only issue is that a lot of people are very ignorant on the things that they are not invested in personally.
Sure.
So, for example, I don't know enough about, let's say, the details of the healthcare industry in Norway. Like, from the workers' perspectives, I don't know enough about how the nurses are getting paid or how much they were. I know that it's not good enough because they are always lacking people in that sector, but the fact that I am probably more informed than the average person in the street, and yet still I don't know if I know enough to cast votes on these things.
Hmm.
That makes it a little bit scary to me, I guess.
Sure. No,
Uh,
and that's a totally understandable fear to have. Would you agree that the nurses probably know a lot more about all of the plight that they have better than you would?
oh yeah, 100%.
Sure. So then, why not this? Instead of having a politician decide what happens to the nurses, right, if they get paid more or if your healthcare is redone in a certain way, instead of that happening, why wouldn't we prioritize the nurses' vote as being the most important, right, and have them vote on policy changes? And then everybody else after that could have a lesser vote that would also be taken into consideration when making those sorts of changes.
Sure, I just don't necessarily know how that would be practically done. Like, if let's say that there are 10,000 nurses,
Hmm.
just to say a number, and then you have like 100,000 people that aren't nurses, and then the 10,000 nurses vote for one thing, and then the 100,000 people vote for a different thing. Like, at that point, will the 100,000 people win over the nurses and then knock down? You see my problems, right?
Yeah. No, totally. So essentially, what I'm talking about is something called vote weighing, right? So it works with any kind of industry, and it could work with nurses. It could also work with building bridges. And I guess, I'll use the nurses example as kind of like a baseline, right? So say we're specifically fighting to make sure that the nurses are getting paid more. Who knows the most about the nurses' plight? The nurses themselves. So they should be the ones that have the most important vote. Since there are obviously going to be people that have to pay those nurses more, right? Who are we talking about? Are we talking about the industry or whatever? Obviously we're talking about not having a capitalist industry, right? But the community itself would be the ones that have to actually give the nurses the money to pay them more, because it would come out of taxes or however you do it. So the people within that local community that are closest to that hospital that the nurses are being paid in, or all of the people in the local community of any community, whatever, they would also have a say as well. With the say of those people basically not basically weighing less the further you get away from the actual topic itself. So the nurses would have the most say, the patients would have a say, and so forth and so on. And you would be able to basically determine all of those sorts of things through different sorts of methods of like just through democracy. Like I was saying, through vote weighing, through ranked choice voting, through liquid democracy, that sort of thing. It's not like it's complicated. I think that I'm making it sound a little bit more complicated than it is. I have been smoking a little bit of weed. But yeah, that's basically what you do is instead of just having a politician make decisions for the nurses, you have the nurses make those decisions themselves, right? And then after that, if people's vote is important, then we would take that into consideration too.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, it doesn't seem like I said. I've never been like completely unsold on these ideas, and to be fair, like I'm I'm fighting for market socialism as a transitionary state. So
Okay.
so this sounds to me like we build society in the same way that we build a worker co-op, for example. Um, that you basically, well, to use a well-known phrase, seize the means of production, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and basically make that the people that work in these specific sectors, they get to decide how these sectors should work, or they at least get to have like the majority vote on how these sectors should work. This is why I'm a fighter for syndicalism, because I do believe that if basically we look at every sector in a society, and then we can see, okay, these people need these systems to work, whereas these other people don't really have anything to do with that. and so these other people shouldn't really have too much of a say in how this system works, if it makes sense.
Yeah. That's exactly what I'm saying too. So like, I think we're basically on the same page.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
it's good that we don't disagree.
Even if we did, it wouldn't be the end of the world.
Yeah,
That's the
sure,
problem
but
with doing things like this online. It's like everybody's always looking for fucking blood sports. Who cares? Just
oh
shit.
yeah,
Let's fucking work for a better future. All of this stuff is theoretical, right? So like, it's fun to discuss, but at the end of the day, we still have to go punch Nazis. So we should take our time, discuss this, obviously, make a plan, and then afterwards go punch some fucking Nazis. Let's get on it. Let's go.
yeah, in a video game. So
In a video game. In
so
Wolfenstein.
yes, in Wolfenstein. That's actually how my streams started out in the beginning. I played a lot of Wolfenstein. It's fun to LARP as a Nazi killer from time to time. But but
Fair.
yeah. The thing is, like, what I wouldn't want is like have some sort of like blood sports debate about socialism with, let's see, you, Zanzi, Hakim, people like that, people that are so much more informed than I am. uh, I just want people to have healthcare, man. No,
I would like literally be shaking in my boots if I had to get into an argument with Zanzi on pretty much anything. I'd be like, no, I'm good. He knows more than me.
yeah. The only thing I feel comfortable discuss or debating him on is religion, because that's my field of study. I literally spend my time with that. But yeah, no, I think that so what I'm trying to fight for um online is sort of like a left unity, but not in the way that most people use that word. Because I feel like when most people say that, oh, we need left unity these days, they usually just talk about anarchists and MLs coming together.
Mhm.
And while that's all well and good, the what's the word I'm looking for? Is it sectarianism?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Uh, yeah, the sectarian, the sectarian way that these two leftist groups talk about each other is unhealthy, and I don't see me as some sort of like let's come together figure on that. Um, but what I'm trying to do is that I don't know if you remember too much about the conversation we had with Chud Logic back whenever I started my project. What I'm trying to do is basically saying that, hey, we are all very focused on America these days, and that's bad
Mhm.
because there are socialists and anarchists and whatever leftists that struggle with their own fights inside of their own countries all around the world, and we have no idea who these people are because we have been so laser focused on like Bernie Sanders, AOC, Trump, fucking Biden, and I think it's unhealthy to have such an obsession with like one hyper capitalist country.
Yeah, I completely agree. 100%. And it's unfortunate for people that make content as well because, well, first of all, most of our audiences, like I was saying before, are primarily from the United States. At least mine is. So whenever I try to talk about other topics outside of the United States, the views go right down the toilet, which just sucks because there's a lot of really interesting, important topics that are happening all across the world to do with socialism, to do with fighting fascism, and that sort of thing. That hyper focusing all the time on the United States politics is just such a fucking drag, man. Um, like I was saying, we have a very strong neo-Nazi and fascist pipeline that's going on in Canada, and there just aren't people out there talking enough about this sort of thing. And we need to talk more about it. We need to raise our fucking voices. We need more people in all other countries to be speaking up and getting out there and talking about their countries as well. And not just because the United States is hyper focused on. Obviously, that is a major problem, but also because we just don't have a fucking clue what goes on anywhere else, especially coming from the North American continent. I know for a fact that I barely understand what Europe is, let alone Asia. Asia's not even a thing. Some streamers think that Vietnam is in fucking West Asia, right? So, like,
Yeah, and
literally. Oh, go
and
ahead.
it goes to my point that I've been saying for a while. Like, if I were to ask you, like, oh, okay, so name a socialist, like a famous socialist thought leader from Switzerland, most people wouldn't be able to do that.
No,
And
exactly.
and that's not because socialism isn't about personalities. It's because we have been so like, because if you were to do the same thing with America, everyone would go like, oh, Bernie Sanders. And
Right.
whether or not you believe he's a socialist, that's still indicative of people being able to recognize leftism in some way, shape, or form within America, but not outside. And my issue with that mainly boils down to, okay, so if we are going to only focus on America, that means that we don't get any international eyes on what's happening in France or uh, 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 I don't know, Kazakhstan or
Hmm.
Ghana or whatever. Like, there could be these massive uh, uh, socialist uprisings or whatever, and we would almost not hear about it, and
Yeah,
that's
or
pretty bad.
China, or Myanmar, or Israel, or Venezuela, Venezuela. Like, we literally don't hear about any of those places until there's something bad that happens, and then that's the only time that we ever do hear about it. Funny
And
thing is, too, is that all of the countries that surround China, like Japan and elsewhere, even they get misinformation about China, and it's literally like you could throw a stone and hit the Chinese continent, Chinese mainland from sorry, from Japan. Fuck.
yeah, and also I think it works. It's a problem in the other on the other end of the spectrum as well, because that means that whenever there are fascist uprisings around the world, we don't seem to recognize that either, because we are just like, oh well, we defeated Trump. Well, fascism is gone now, I guess. It's
Yeah.
yeah, it's pretty bad.
Well, what is it? Oh man, my geography is all fucked today. But in just you know what? Never mind. I can't even talk about it. But there's a lot of places that are in. See, and this is the problem, right? Because like I don't know enough about geography, um, because like we aren't like have we don't have that forced into our heads when we're kids.
Yeah,
So like especially in the West, right? Especially in like Canada and the United States, like we don't fucking know anything
yeah,
about most countries. Like we get a little bit of information that comes out of like the UK. We get a little bit of information that comes out of like the EU. Some stuff that comes out of Australia or New Zealand, but outside of that, like we really don't get any information at all about the world.
yeah. An example here is that okay, so Norway is having an election this year. Now I know you're not big into electoralism, but this is like a very important election in Norway. We have had a right wing government for 8 years, and it looks like we are finally getting rid of those assholes for the time being. Anyway, now most people, I feel like most socialists I talk to, and even most people in general outside of Norway, wouldn't even know that that is going to happen in Norway, which is a you know, industrialized, wealthy country that we sit on most of, the good oil in the world, and yet still no one knows about this. And whenever I talk about that, my viewership, well, my viewership stays the same, but that's because I have no one to begin with. But no, it's the same thing that goes on with like all of these countries, like, which is why I'm doing these interviews. Like, okay, so what is actually policies that people fight for, what is socialist action inside of these countries, I have no idea. So I decided to myself, let's just talk to people from these countries and ask them themselves.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And I remember what I was saying now. In Ukraine, that is basically one of the places where fascism is getting
Yes.
no attention, and yet it's blowing the fuck up down there. They're like, and I actually think that a lot of them are using imagery of Nestor Makhno, which is unfortunate. Who's an anarchist that fought during the Soviet Revolution against the whites and the Reds. But anyway, yeah. So in Ukraine, yeah, the neo Nazis and fascists, like it is basically a hot zone right there, and it's radicalizing a bunch of other Eastern European countries that are all in that area, and nobody talks about it. Nobody says a fucking thing about it. There's a few anarchist groups that are down there that are trying to fight against them, but they're so small. They're like a handful of dudes, and all they can really do is like spray bomb shit, like spray paint some stuff, and that's about all the action that really has happened. Well, I don't know because I don't get enough information, but that's all the action I've seen.
Yeah, and I know that I'm bashing online leftism a lot, but I do feel like if we were able to come together and realize that socialism is supposed to be a global thing, then maybe we could actually help people around the world. Like that, I thought that was the point.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
International proletariat solidarity. We need that.
stupid me thought we were going to help each other. Uh, but yeah, and that's, yeah, it bugs me. And, you know, I get it. I understand. Like, I find American politics interesting. I think it's fun to have an eye on it, but it's not the end all be all. And I think it's on high time that we start understanding that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think going back to your leftist unity point, I believe in leftist unity. I believe in unity among all working people, honestly. And I think that we need to. Here's the thing about leftist unity is that on the internet, it has become a meme that it's an impossible thing to achieve, which is true, which is absolutely true on the internet. And I would specifically say on Twitter. Right. But when you're talking about leftist unity, we're talking about leftist unity, proletariat unity all across the entire world. Right. We're not just talking about the people that are bitching and complaining and arguing on Twitter, because we already know that Twitter incentivizes us to fight and squabble and piss each other off and fucking get mad at each other all the time. So it shouldn't be considered a serious platform. Nobody should take that shit fucking seriously. The truth is that in real life on the ground, and I'm going to tell you this from personal fucking experience, even though I've had disagreements with leftists on the ground, never were they ideological. Not a fucking chance. Not once. Sometimes it's personality disputes because I have kind of like a very, I'm a little bit of an overwhelming person. So like I expect results. I'm like very gung-ho. I'm like, let's get shit done kind of deal. And like that can come off as being abrasive to people. And that's just a person-to-person problem that people have had with me that are leftists or socialists in real life. And even that doesn't happen very often. Most of the time, we just don't talk about shit. We get our noses to the grindstone and we fucking do stuff. And that's what really matters. And that's the thing that we don't see ever on Twitter or on YouTube. What you only see is a bunch of people getting angry and fighting over bullshit because they wanted to get into a fucking fight with each other. You never actually see the good. So if that is any kind of like reassurance to anybody out there, I hope it is, that this stupid squabbling bullshit is something that happens almost exclusively on the internet.
Oh, yeah. And I feel like, I don't know if you've seen the meme, but like, I feel like it says something about online discourse. The meme is basically like, what does fascists, liberals, and leftists have in common? They all hate leftists.
True.
And I feel like online that's very obvious that that's the case. We fucking can't
online
stop
it's yeah, for sure. But see, that's the thing. Online, it's just a silly place where everybody's getting into silly arguments, and that's why most people that are active on like in real life, they actively dismiss everything that streamers say. I've actually faced that a couple of times going and organizing with people. When they find out that I'm a streamer, they're like, really? Okay. Because they usually think that you don't do fuck all, or that you're just like, whatever. It's just, yeah, they don't trust you. Like, the people on the ground do not trust streamers. They don't think that they're serious people whatsoever. So, and when they see all of the fighting, they just laugh, right? Because every single organization that I've been in has been full of leftists, socialists, Marxists, hardcore communists, lots of Marxist, Leninist, Maoists, lots of anarchists, and they don't fucking talk about any. They'll have a couple of conversations. They'll do book clubs. They'll read each other's shit, but they never get into fights about it. They just do. They do work. They get on the ground and they do shit. That's all that matters, is getting shit done.
Yeah, and in my opinion, we need to start realizing that, it's not the end of the world if you disagree on specific policy points, because we are not nowhere near the point where that matters anyway.
Well, and here's the thing, is that online it's commodified. Your hot takes are bought and sold through likes and retweets, right? So every time you say something inflammatory, you're incentivized to say more inflammatory things, because you get attention, you get affirmation, you get all sorts of things from doing it. It's literally a market for selling petty disputes, anger, and fucking bullshit CIA talking points. It's literally what it is. And trust me, you make a lot of money on Twitch and on YouTube and on Twitter and all of those sorts of things. Whenever you push the state line, whenever you push state propaganda, you get boosted in the algorithm. You get tons of likes. All of a sudden, you get tons of super chats. It's really interesting.
Maybe that's why I don't receive any super chats and stuff like that.
Go to the dark side. Fuck it. Yeah. Have no morals or anything like that. You'll make $300,000 a year.
Oh, fucking hell! Maybe that's what I need to do. No. All right. So, do you have any final things you want to touch on, or?
No, I think that was pretty good. One thing that I do want to touch on is that and actually, this would be fantastic to ask you as well, kind of put you in the hot seat. In a couple of weeks, I want to do a charity live stream to raise some funds so we can get a wheelchair accessibility ramp built onto the community fridge that we just set up. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get enough people in the community to donate skills and so forth to get that done. And it's one of the main priorities that we've wanted since the very beginning. And it's unfortunate that it hasn't been done yet, but we need to raise money to do it. So if you'd like, I'd love to have you on and we could have like a conversation and raise some money for some cool socialist causes.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
That's awesome.
Yeah, just DM me about it and I'll definitely make some room in my schedule for it. I was 100% sure that you were going to be like, oh yeah, so we're gonna do this charity stream. So I was wondering if you wanted to donate
$10,000. No, fuck, I don't have any money. I can't expect anybody else that does this fucking for a job has money, or not even for a job, just even as a hobby.
Yeah, I got a question in my chat like a couple months ago. While I was playing Rust with Chad Logic and Sansi, and they were asking if any of us were paying our bills with the money we make on stream, and my answer had to be like, if I were to do that, then I wouldn't be able to pay a single bill. I don't earn money on that. So I'm doing this for the funsies and the clout.
No shit. I didn't start getting any money off of this for like, I think the first 12 years I did it, and I put every fucking ounce of my free time into it. Now, because of COVID, I lost my ability to have I was doing a different sort of job to make ends meet and stuff like that. But since COVID happened, can't qualify for the CERB. That job wasn't real, so it wasn't on paper. So can't do that one anymore. So now all I got left is the YouTube grift. And that just fucking barely makes the rent, and it's just like, goddamn.
You could start an OnlyFans. You're a pretty good looking dude.
Hey. Anyway, so yeah, if people want to come join us for the charity live stream sometime, it'll be in the next couple of weeks. I haven't set a date yet, that'd be great. Yeah, it should be for a really good cause. And check on my YouTube channel if that's something that you feel like doing. We do fun stuff on there.
Yeah, let's see. Are you in my chat right now, or?
Yeah, I just dropped in a little while ago.
Yeah, okay. So you can just post your links there, and people can go check you out. I would recommend people to check out Aaron. He's pretty fucking awesome. And like I said, he's a pretty good looking guy as well. So you know, doesn't hurt on the eyes.
Well, you're so sweet.
I know. I'm just a big teddy bear. That's what I am.
Oh yeah. Oh, I'm trying to drop my links in here, and it's saying that I don't have permission to send messages.
Wait, what? Okay, just
that's what it says.
Send it to me in wait. Send it to me on DMs, and I'll post them.
Okay, I'll do that.
And then we'll see if I have permission.
And in the meantime, we'll just have like an awkward silent moment.
Oh yeah.
I could hum for the audience if that would work.
How else would my internet daddy read my super chat if I'm doing IRL activism from Sansi? I don't know, Sansi. I don't
know. I know exactly. How could it happen? I don't know. Well, maybe just like if you put your hands together and pray, hopefully he'll hear you in his heart and in his mind, and that'll be enough.
Send butthole picture. That
Send hands and tweet.
Sometimes I'm glad I don't have too big of a community surrounding me, because I can say stuff like that and it won't be clipped out of context.
That's funny as fuck. You know what? Nobody has clipped me out of context. I don't know why. Maybe it's just hard to find anything out of context where I've said something so heinous that they could fucking lambaste me for it, but nobody's done it to me yet. Or maybe I'm just so unimportant in the world. I like to think it's that.
Oh god, this is going to sound like a dig. Probably.
I hope so. I hope that it's that.
Let's see. I'm gonna just drop your channel. Everyone that hasn't already, go check out this YouTube channel. He is amazing. He does really cool stuff, and he is on his way to 30,000 subscribers.
Hey.
So yeah, that's pretty cool. I feel like we went on a wild ride here.
Yeah.
But I did get some information about Canada that I didn't know. At least your neck of the woods. I might actually have to do another Socialism in Canada stream with someone at the other end of the country.
I would definitely suggest that. I would suggest 100%. Get somebody that knows a little bit about Canada to talk about it.
Yeah, that's that might not be the stupidest idea that I've heard all day. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on, man. And hey, again, just DM me the information about the charity stream, and I am very happy to jump on.
Will do. All right, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
All right, have a good one.
You too. Bye.